Hey, welcome back into agriculture. I'm Britton Rucker. After recent snowfall across Kansas, cattle producers now looking ahead to the next challenge, and that's mud. It can take a toll on livestock health and performance, but there are ways to manage it. Joining us today is Justin Waggoner, Beef Systems Extension Specialist, to share some tips on helping cattle through these tough conditions. Justin, mud is a big challenge for cattle producers this time of year. How does excessive mud impact cattle health and performance?
Yeah, Britton, you're absolutely right. I mean, mud certainly has an impact both on cattle producers as well as cattle. As I think about the primary impacts of mud on cattle, it's really a story about energy expenditures. It takes additional energy for those cattle to do all those, normal activities, from getting to the water tank to getting to the bunk. And so really where that, I think, oftentimes shows up the most as we think about feedlot cattle is a reduction in performance, average daily gain, increased feed conversions, as well as greater days on feed. And that's where it's really quantifiable. And really it doesn't take a whole lot of mud for us to start to see some of those impacts. Even a few inches of mud can substantially reduce cattle performance, especially in a confinement situation. Under extreme conditions, that reduction in performance can be as high as 25% in some cases. So it certainly does have a very significant impact. On the health side of things, as I start to think it from a very simple perspective, cattle comfort. And so anytime that cattle are not comfortable, we see greater health risk in those cattle. And so that's really one of the primary benefits, or the benefits of dealing with mud, is trying to keep cattle as comfortable as possible. The other really unintended health outcome that we often see associated with muddy conditions, especially in colder temperatures, is an increase in lameness, simply because as those pen surfaces become frozen and rough, it certainly can have some impacts on the cattle claw and just the leg structure as those cattle are trying to get to the bunk and get to the water tank.
Justin, what are some practical steps that producers can take to manage mud and improve conditions for their livestock?
So sure, as I think about, the winter months and when we're likely to see, additional snowfall maybe throughout the winter months, I think the first thing is to really try to maintain our pen conditions, which may be already degraded. Feeding sites as well would kind of fall into that category. So, a simple box blade, if we get new snow that comes, try to remove that snow as soon as possible with a box blade or a tractor loader. Keep that additional moisture from working down into that pen surface or that feeding site surface. So that's really step one, to keep that additional moisture. If possible, we'd like to remove that snow from the pen surface before it melts. Another thing that producers can do is simply bedding cattle with straw or corn stalks even. And really our goal here is just to provide those cattle enough space to have a dry place to lay down. Just that by itself can certainly increase that cattle comfort that we've talked about so much here today. Really kind of the third mitigation strategy that I think about is to spread cattle out. Oftentimes as we think about that in terms of confinement situations such as dry lot, that we can spread those cattle out, increase our the amount of space we have for those cattle and make it available. Well, we can also do the same thing in calving pastures or those cow-calf situations. Maybe that's moving to an additional feeding site and just simply reducing the number of animals that are using that high-use area.
Well, Justin, thanks so much for coming on and chatting with me today. Everyone stick around. Eye on Ag will be back after the break.